book, exposure.
Did you have to say it like that?
Like it's a mystery. Like it's interesting stuff. You know, it's stuff that she wants everyone to know about that a lot of people don't talk about, and it's a mystery. And if you read it, you will learn a little bit something about it. When you said you had stockpiles of porn, and
Anybody wants some DVDs?
and you said that you're looking at it for various reasons. At what era do you feel that female presence truly raised?
It's interesting to see and to think about how content reflects what's going on in the culture. The industry and production is not like this bubble where they're like, oh man, we're gonna bang some broads, and that's gonna happen, it's the 70s, and then all of a sudden it's the 80s, and you're like, oh, we're all gonna do cocaine and have race cars. That's not what's happening. Porn is a piece that kind of shifts as it moves in and out of culture, because everybody who's in it is a part of this bigger picture. So, when porn first started, you were seeing these kind of edgy art films and stuff like that, and then it turned into these weird film projects, and then it turned into these business endeavors while the VCR was happening, and everyone was like, I want to make as much porn as possible so I can make all this money. And it's reflecting what's happening in the culture. It's not necessarily spewing these themes that it comes up with on its own, like a volcano or something. It doesn't work that way. And so when you think about where in porn are women really powerful or kind of considered as viewers or considered as performers and stuff like that, it's not so much that they weren't, they are, and now we're here. It's not so much that as porn is a reflection of what's going on in the culture with women and with gender and things like that. So, I recently did this interview with Candida Royale, and she was talking about being a performer and then being a producer in the 80s, and all this pushback that she got about oh, women aren't going to watch that, whatever. And in this supposedly little boys club, she had all of this following and interest and stuff like that. And it's interesting to think about the dearth of feminism that was going on in the 80s.
What was that word?
Dearth. The lack.
Oh my gosh. Dearth. I learned a new word. What does this mean?
The lack of, it's just not going on.
Dearth.
But it wasn't that there was no more feminism happening. It's that it ceased to become this big oh my god selling point that it was in the 70s, but it was always still there. So there was all this content that was being grabbed up by people who wanted it, but it just wasn't being talked about. And so you can look at the content that's the most consumed, the content that's popular, and you can see different things that are happening in society. I think it is. I love this. I love how people who are anti-porners today are so stuck on talking about gonzo porn. One, not understanding what gonzo porn is, but also so fixated on a genre that was so popular that circus, how big can we gape your asshole? That stuff that still happens obviously, but that was it was the genre of the moment for that 2003, 4, 5, 6 kind of thing where everything seemed like it was that, and it wasn't that everything was that. It was just that was the BDSM today or or whatever, and people still hook on that that's the content that's happening without thinking about how the industry evolves and the culture evolves, and so what people want evolves as well.
Right. You talked about how yes he's a porn performer. Yes, he has a big dick, but compared to normal 5 to 6?
Mm-hmm.
5 to 6.
That's
normal, right. Average, I should say. Sorry. And then you have your dildos, which are 9 times out of 10 bigger than even the largest porn penis.
Yeah.
And it was whoa, it just clicked. I'm holy hell. I could see a man being totally intimidated by your wife. Oh, you came home with that big rubber cock? Okay. And it's big. And it's phallic. And it's phallic and maybe it has these big balls that maybe I don't have. But on top of that, it's just I just never thought we lump our 8-inch or over penises in extra large dildos. Mm-hmm. But it's not, it's half the time it's just the fact that a porn star's dick is usually smaller than the average dildo is what I'm talking about. And that blew my mind.
Yeah.
So are you saying that men, or do you think that men are just simply intimidated by it?
I have no idea. Maybe some are, maybe some aren't. Mm-hmm. That's the same question when people are oh, those women in porn, they make me feel so.
Right.
Maybe they do, maybe they don't. That's a real question, and it's an interesting thing to think about. Here's a real human, and yet somehow it's unreal. That whole line of thinking just, I find it so tedious, because porn performers are people too. They exist. Yeah. But the question, the idea of okay, you have these big dick movies. Does that do anything? Does that have an impact on men? Well, it must. If it has an impact on women, then it's going to have an impact on men. And then the added dimension, though, that we make these toys that are like, whoa.
Girth is like the worst thing, yeah.
But I wonder if a man is just say, you know, that they all have big dicks.
They seem. That's the other thing too.
True.
This is the trickery of the camera. Because I remember, and I won't even tell you who, but somebody very popular. When I met this very popular person in person, and I was like, "You are adorable." Is his penis really that big, or does it just look big in context?
Same with big asses.
Gotta shake those pubes and pull that
You gotta pull it back and do the. It's true.
There's one part in the book that I think everybody probably would be interested in, and I don't know if you talk to porn stars about it, but like with sexually transmitted diseases, like the industry has had like some scares through the years, like with like Mark Wallace in the 90s and such, like going through, and then was it syphilis? Was like
that was one recent.
Yeah, more recent, and then that stuff is really scary. And if there's anything that like I think that people should realize is that these people do put their bodies on the line.
Yeah. I did a study. Like that's the thing too. That there's a lot of like, I've done a lot of like research that's full of data and papers and all of those things you can find references to in the book. But I don't go through the like here's my big chart and here's like. And so I did this one series of focus groups and interviews where I talked to performers about health and safety on set, specifically related to STI stuff. And that bout of research happened before that syphilis piece. And that was interesting because in that data, I can very well remember a couple of performers going, they don't test for everything. Because they didn't test for syphilis. Like, that was just added to the battery.
Do you know what they like what the rundown is?
The rundown, I mean, I don't know it off the top of my head. It's now almost everything. But prior to that syphilis piece, syphilis wasn't on the battery. So, I mean, obviously a syphilis test existed, but it wasn't something that was like, it was like, oh, you get tested for syphilis every few months or once a year or something. Because this is the thing that's interesting, because, I mean, you think about it in any work, any business, any practice, where, you can start doing process A, and then a year goes by, or 2 years go by, or however much time goes by, and then you're dealing with all this other shit on the side, and process A is still in place. But you might not be going like, oh, maybe we should look at process A and make sure that it's still working right in these new circumstances or after this much time. And I think syphilis was one of those things. It's just like also the super, super resistant gonorrhea. Like, what's the treatment? I don't know. Like when you think about treatment protocol, like I'm not that kind of doctor.
Right.
But like, is that working? How is that working? How is the follow-up? What is happening with like antibiotics and all of that stuff as the world around it changes? And so, although I don't know this to be true, I would imagine that when the testing protocol started in the 90s, people were like, oh, syphilis and cholera and consumption and gout. These are the gout. It sounds so provincial. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe it wasn't. I mean, I'm not that kind of doctor, and I'm not an epidemiologist. But when people were designing the protocol, maybe that didn't raise as a thing that is like, oh, this is a likelihood of popping in this population. That doesn't mean it shouldn't have been on there. But at the same time, again, going back to process A, when it was developed, for whatever reason that wasn't added. But then as time went on, as the performer pool got bigger, as, I don't know, different things got mixed in, as the world changes, and I mean, infections spread and move around, and I mean, you can see out, if you look at like those interesting, like I like the CDC website because I'm a big nerd, and you can see those like hotspot maps where they're like, this is happening here, that's happening, you're like, whoa. When you think about this stuff, and you go, well, duh, like, why wasn't that on there? It's just one of those things when you think about juggling all of these balls and all of this stuff happening, and that is where performers live. You know what I mean? Like, it's like all of that stuff that we can talk about in abstraction because we don't have that potential in our workplace. That is where performers are like working on a daily basis, and that is wild shit to think about, And it's really. I did an interview recently with Dan O'Connell, who used to own Girlfriend's Films, and now he just shoots for them, but he's the greatest director ever. And he, he's a really soulful guy and really thoughtful individual. And I'm not quoting him verbatim, but one thing he talked about was how he loves his job and he feels so honored because he gets to go there every day and be around people who do this work. And he's like, they do this work. Like these women put that, because they only shoot girl. Like these women put themselves in this position to make this art. And I mean, to him it's art and work. Yeah, and he's like, they do this stuff and they put themselves at risk socially, psychologically, their physical bodies, all of this stuff in a medium that we as a world don't want to understand or don't want to like negotiate because we're so uncomfortable. So he's like, I love my job that I get to be around these like heroes every day, and I'm like, heroes. Drive me nuts when people are like porn stars. I'm like, You do that, John. Like,
Give me the old.
I'll see how well you do. Anyway.
No, but that is weird though, because the world's big, shit spreads. Get tested, and if they have big long fingernails sometimes,
Oh my god.
wash your hands, clean under them nails. That's the first thing I think of.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
Well, there was a thing that is really interesting is that, like, so when I was doing that, the one study I was talking about, where I was like, so, what do you think is the most risky, like, sex behavior to do? And, like, condom, no condom, like, whatever. To see how performers understand risk and how it's different from the way, like, science defines risk. Because it's like, they're like, no, actually, like, having sex with a condom is more risky because have you ever, like, stuck a condom up your asshole for however long? Like, all those little rips and things that are gonna happen anyway. But, like, you're just shredding that shit. And it's just like, so a condom is actually more risky. Like, that's the way y'all think of that versus, like, every bit of science that says this is a safer thing to do. It really points to misunderstandings that we have, just in research in general. Is like, you think about sex, for example, with a particular set of normative things happening or behaviors happening or whatever. And so we're like, okay, sex, you do this, it's supposed to be like that, this is how long it takes, whatever. And then you go to a population where sex one doesn't have that emotional component, like, at least not in the romance sex or hookup sex or whatever. It's a workspace, so it's thought of differently. But then where the actual mechanics of it happen differently, and then you try to take this understanding and pop it on that understanding, and you're like, this is like an apples and radishes thing that's happening here. Like, they really aren't matching up.
so true.
I wish I thought
I
of
wish I had a really good metaphor to use, like,
I have it's funny because it's not like a weird object metaphor, but like I'm not the first person to think about that. With porn, maybe, but there's this research that talks about the way people do HIV transmission mitigation in, like, sub-Saharan Africa, and how the whole model, like the whole efficacy model, comes from, like, the United States, Bay Area, like that whole space to prevent STI transmission in men who have sex with men. So you have this, like, super educated, aware, activist, medical population, which is awesome. But then that treatment mode, is getting supplanted on sub-Saharan Africa. Like, is this the same as this? Same understanding, same resources, same no, not at all. So why aren't we thinking about, like, these things are not the same? So why aren't we thinking it's just the same thing with, like, porn sex and, like, real life sex, whatever that means? It's like, it doesn't mean one's good or bad. It means we have two totally different issues to talk about. Like, let's talk about the actual issues and not try and be like, well, this works over here for these people. Let's
gonna work for us,
That's gonna work everywhere. It all works the same. It doesn't work that way.
exposure. Really, it, like, questions, like, I just really liked it. I'm really glad I read it. And it has a banana on the front. Who doesn't like bananas?
Yay,
Wait, you got a little card in here.
You can actually get it on my website, ChauntelleTibbals.com. It's very exciting. I think you can also get it at adultempire.com.
So questions and comments below, and please don't forget to subscribe.
All right. Okay, I gotta get up because not to be.
My ass hurts.
Sweaty. Sweaty and your ass hurts.
Oh my gosh.
Ew.
I was looking for
Ew. Yeah. Look, it's all probably colored.